Okay, so um, did you go through this material by any chance?
Yeah, I went through the components
Mm-hmm.
and I kind of got stuck in between this um, ng change function.
Mm-hmm. And it changes the okay. You're talking about the life cycle hooks.
Lifecycle hooks, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that we'll do later. I mean,
ng
the
on change, yeah.
ng on
On
changes, the
changes.
first one.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so
Mm.
today we'll go ahead with the directives.
Okay.
Uh, yeah. So when it comes to Angular, right? So basically, this is another building block, just like component. This
Mm-hmm.
is equally important as a component. But in Angular 1, we have this concept called directives. Okay, and Angular 2 just use the same feature here, and they just added components. Okay, components also basically another kind of directives. Okay, it's a directive. Component itself is a directive. And coming to this directives concept, so there are three types of directories. So directives we have in Angular. The first one is component itself is a directive. So we can call a component as a directive. Okay, and the second one is attribute directives. Okay, so basically, attribute directives mostly used to change existing behavior of HTML tag, or to add some new behavior to HTML tag, or any component if you are working on any component, right? Or you can basically add some styles. So these kind of things we use attribute directives. For example, you want to change background of a component or background of a HTML tag. You can use attribute directive. You can just add an attribute directive there, and then that styles whatever you write inside the directives will be applied to the host component or the host element. And the third type is structural directives. So as the name suggests, structural directives basically alter the structure of the HTML. Let's say you have a student list of 100 students, then you want to display all the students in your web page. Then basically what you'll do is you'll write a for loop inside the template, and then that for loop will basically generate this student row for all those 100 students, right? So basically, it will generate a kind of table for you. Only thing is you just have to write couple of lines of HTML. That's it. It will do the generation part. Or let's say you have a functionality which you want to show to only admin user, and you don't want to show that functionality to the non-admin user. So in that case, what you can do, you can do if else, right? So if he is admin, then show this HTML, or else show that section. So these kind of structural changes in your template can be achieved by the structural directives. Okay, so we can basically generically say there are three types of directives. The first one is the component directives, because component is many like main important feature. That's why we covered component first. But normally we should cover directives first, and then we should go to the components, right? So, but because component is the main and one of the basic building block, we covered component first, and then we are looking at directives in the next following the components. So the first category is component directives, and the second category is attribute directives, and third category is structural directives. So component basically, how we can say is component is a uh, directive. It will have its own template. Okay? Whereas these two structural and attribute directives doesn't have their own template. Okay, that is the main difference between a component and a directive. Okay, so basically a component itself is a directive, but between the difference between the component directives and other two types of directives is The component directives will have CSS and its own HTML template and its own logic, right? But whereas attribute directives and structural directives, they don't have HTML, and thus they don't need to have CSS, right? So basically they don't have CSS and HTML. So they only have some logic, the TypeScript logic, and you'll be writing in a TypeScript class, which will be executed whenever the Angular sees that attribute anywhere, right? So this is the categorization I just explained. One is the component directives, second one is structural directives, third one is the attribute directives. Okay, so mostly we use attribute directives to change the appearance or behavior. Okay, and structural directives basically change the layout of elements, or basically they control the structure of your template, whether to show this element or hide this element, or show loop through a set of data and show multiple sections of same HTML repeatedly. So all this kind of decision making will happen inside the structural directives or structure directives. Okay, and attribute directives are, well, it will not do any changes to the existing structure, but they will just change the appearance, or it will add the behavior meaning, let's say there is a button, and whenever that button is clicked, you want to show some alert, right? So that behavior you can add using an attribute directive. Okay, so let's see how this directive will look like. Okay, so just like a template class, attribute will the directive will look like this one. Okay, so it will have a decorator here, and this is the class, and these are your imports. Okay, so the main difference between a component class and a directive class is displayed here. See, here we have directive decorator. This is a class level decorator. Okay, class decorator. So here we have directive decorator, and here we have component decorator. And here we have a selector, the same way we have selector here in the component also. But we have these two extra, right? Template URL and style URLs. But whereas in directive, we don't need to use these two things, because the directive will not have HTML template or the CSS one. Okay, rest of the things are same. Like you can have the lifecycle methods, and you can have the constructor, or you can define any custom methods and write your logic there. So it's entirely up to you. You have freedom to do that. But only thing is, it has to follow some structure. So one is, you should have a directive decorator or annotation. We should call decorator. And we should have the selector. So with this name, this is a selector, right? This is just like a HTML tag in the other templates. If you want to call this component, basically you'll be using this as a HTML tag. The same way, if it is a attribute directive, then you should use this as an attribute for any existing HTML element, or for any existing Angular component. If it is structural directives, you should be using star or something. But mostly we will not be developing structural directives, because structural directives already developed by Angular. We'll be using them directly as is. And if you want to develop a custom directive, then this is the syntax. Okay. Now, how to create a custom directive? Okay. Let me go here. So for creating directives in Angular is just like your component creation. We have to use ngCli. So we use ng and generate directive and your directive name. So the short form for this is ng space g space d, and then your directive name, just like ng g c for component, and the component name, right? So you
Mhm.
can use a short form also, ng g d
GD.
and the
Okay.
directive name. Okay, so here I tried creating a simple example, which is a highlight. Okay, so it will create a highlight directive, And once I run this command, it will basically create this types class for me. Okay, but not this one. I think I need to remove this from the example. It will create a bare minimum directive. So it will add this selector dynamically because we added the highlight, right? So when we are seeing the file structure, we saw app as a prefix, right? So for all the components, directives, it will add app as a prefix, and then after that, it added our directive name. Okay. So because Angular is supports the camel case letters, it made the H as capital, but whatever you type here, right, that name will come here. Okay, and you are free to change. I mean, you can be, it doesn't need to be this one. You can change it to XYZ, right? So it will still work. Only thing is, instead of using this one, you have to use that XYZ whenever you are using that one. Okay. So now here I tried adding basically what the intention of creating this directive is to add some specific background or specific highlight color to any element where this directive will be used, right? So for that, what I have to use is I have to inject the element reference. Basically, element reference is TypeScript. I mean the Angular inbuilt service, which will give reference to the element host element, which this directive is used. Okay, where the directive is used. For example, here we are using the paragraph tag, and we are using this the directive as is, just like here it is, right? So app highlight, and here we are using app highlight, and we have some text here. So the reference to this paragraph tag will be coming to this service. Okay. Now what I can do is I can get the reference this dot this el object dot. I'm just going to change the background color of that element, right? So what I can do, I can get the native element. Native element means the paragraph tag, which is the native element, and I'm changing the style of it. So style dot background color. So I'm changing the background color to yellow. Okay. So now whenever I use this directive for any element, doesn't have to be paragraph, right? It can be a header tag, it can be a div tag, it can be a span tag. So any tag I can use this directive now, because this is a reusable, right? So whatever you write in Angular is a reusable piece of code. So now I can use this one here, and I can use this to some other tag also. But what output we'll see is, we'll see background of that particular element will become yellow. Okay. So basically what we did is we created a service, we created a directive, and we added some logic there, and we basically have that reference, directive reference, and wherever we use that reference, the behavior of that element is changed now, right? So that's what we're talking. We're talking about directives, basically attribute directives. Basically, we use this to change the behavior, okay, or change the appearance. So we did the appearance thing, right, in the previous example. So that is how you can create a directive and you can use it. We'll execute this example, but before that, let's go back to the directive structure. So yeah, directive structure, and yeah, that is how you can use any directive, right, with this reference. Now we have in the directives, right? So we have two types of directives. One is a structural and attribute, apart from the component directive, right? So what is a structural directive? So structural directive, as we discussed, right, it will change the structure of, or like layout of your template. So now there is small difference between attribute directives and structural directives. Just like how there is a difference between component component directive and the rest of the directives, right? So there is small difference between structural directive and attribute directives. So the structural directives will always have a star in front of the directive. So ngif is a directive here, but we have a star here. So this is like kind of syntactical sugar, so that whenever you look at this directive, you'll come to know that this is a structural directive. Okay, that means it will alter the HTML based on some conditions. So now what I'm doing here is I'm just using this is logged in variable from my component class. If this is true, then I'm going to display this text. If that is not true, then I'm not going to show this text. Okay, so this will help me, this indicator will help me to determine whether user is logged in or not. So based on that, I will show UI accordingly to the user. If he is logged in, I'll show welcome to the dashboard. If he's not logged in, I'm not going to show the welcome message, right? So this is kind of decision making. That's the reason we call it as ng if. If this is true, then execute this. If it is not true, then don't execute it. Okay. So the syntax of ngif is like this. Okay, you can basically use any HTML tag, and you can close that HTML tag, and then you can do star ng if equals to the condition. Okay, if it is condition true, it will execute this part. If condition is false, it will not execute it. Okay, and it doesn't have to be a direct straightforward variable. You can have a complex object like a user object or employee object or anything, but only thing is you always have to give a boolean reference to this one. So based on that boolean return value, it will execute this part. Okay, you can call any method also. Okay, there is no big difference. You can call any method, and it will do the same thing. If that method returns true, it will execute this part. If it doesn't return true, then it will not execute this part. Okay, so now just like if we have if else. Okay, so if this is not executed, if this is not true, then go to the else part. Okay, but the syntax is little difference compared to our programming language. Like in TypeScript, we can say if then else, right? But here if is fine, just like we saw, and the first variable is the condition, and we have to close that condition with semicolon, and we have to write else, and then we have to give the template reference, ng template reference. So this ng template reference will be it must be ng template, ng hyphen template. Okay, we'll cover this ng hyphen template. Excuse me. We'll cover this ng hyphen template in here, the templates section, 10 section. Okay, so this is for now, assume that this is a container. Okay, container of some HTML. This will not be executed by default in your browser. Only thing is, it's like, write this ng template and write whatever HTML you want to be inside it. That will not be executed unless until you give this reference somewhere like this. Okay, it's like a container. It's like a variable. You assign some value to it, and then take that reference, and that reference variable must be having a hash here, and then whatever reference name you want to give. Okay, and just take that and put it here in the else block. And now what we'll do is, let's say if is logged in is true, then it will not go to the else block. So it will ignore all this highlighted part, and it will print welcome username, whatever the name contains, welcome John. Okay, but if let's say it is false, then it will go to the else section. In the else section, it will just try to display whatever value inside this template reference variable. Okay, let's call it template reference variable. So this is my template, and this is my template reference and reference variable, and I'm just referring it here. Then it will display user not logged in if this is false. Okay, it will not display this one. It will replace this one, the highlighted part, with this one. You can write HTML also inside it. It's not like you just have to write text. So it's up to you. You have that freedom here. Okay, that is if else. And the second one is ng for. So just like we discussed the 100 students list, right? If you have multiple objects or multiple values and you want to iterate through all those objects and display data in user interface, then in that case you have to use ng for. Okay, and ng for syntax is like this: HTML tag and star prefix, just like structural directives. All structural directives will have star, right? So star ng for equals let variable name of list of items. So this can be an array, or this can be an list of values, or this can be kind of object array where like the 100 students list or 100 employees or 1000 employees will be there, and we'll basically iterate through all those data, and then after that you can close that here with semicolon and then your close tag. Okay, it can be a paragraph tag, it can be a div tag, or it can be anything. Okay, so what we're doing is we are saying let x of a list of variables. Okay, so if you see here, you'll understand better. I'm just having a list element and ng for let item of this array. Okay, I have 5 elements in this array. I just hard coded array to simplify the example, right? So I have 5 elements in the array. So every time one variable will come into this one, and for each iteration it will execute the section in between this tag. Okay, so wherever you used ng for, right? So that respective tag, wherever it is closed, in between that HTML will be executed for each element. Okay, so now output of this one is just it will print 1 2 3 4 5. Okay, you can see the output here also. So this is a bare minimum example, a simple example, but if I can remove this from this array from the template and move it to my component class, so it will look like this. I created a items array, and this will have numbers. Okay, this syntax denotes it's a array, right? So now in the constructor, whenever my component is created in the Angular, constructor will be called, right? So after constructor, it will call the ng on in it. So now this dot items equal. So here I'm just hard coding 1 2 3 4 5 into the items array, and now in my template, so the template is this file, course content component.html. So in this file, so what I have a, unordered list, and then in the unordered list I have a list element, and basically I want to display 5 times my list element, not the unordered list, because if I basically iterate this unordered list, then I'll be having 5 unordered lists, but I don't want that. I want only one unordered list, but 5 list elements or 5 list tags. So that's the reason I have put this ng for on top of list, but not on top of unordered list, right? So now the ng for let item of items. This items is coming from this one. Okay, so it will refer this items from here, and equals to every time one item, right? So this item variable we are displaying it here. So now this 1 2 3 4 5 will be replaced here when application is running, and then each time one element will come into this item variable, and this item variable we are displaying it here. Okay, so now once it runs successfully, it will generate HTML like this in the browser. Okay, so another list, and list element for first element, and list element for second, and 3 4 and 5, and finally we have this closed tag. Okay, So this section is executed 5 times repeatedly because of the for loop, and the output you see is this one 1 2 3 4 5. Okay. So any questions so far in the ng if and if else
If else.
or for
No, sir, it's clear. Yeah.
clear, right? So we'll move
Mhm.
on to the next topic, which is okay. Let's do one more example of yeah, one more example of for loop. This is a very simple example, right? It just will
Mhm.
print 1 2 3 4 5, but mostly will not face this kind of simple scenarios in
Yes.
real-time applications, right? So we'll be seeing
Mhm.
little complex cases. So here I have a episodes array. Okay, so
Mhm.
that episodes array will have is having objects, right? So each line is an object here. So each object has a title variable or like title field and a director field. Okay, so in each episode we have how many episodes? Around 8 episodes we have. So in the 8 episodes, for each episode we have a title and director. And here my HTML is looking same. Here I'm not using the template URL, not the externalized template. Here I'm using the inline template because my the HTML is small. I don't want to put this like this to make it complicated. So I just put it here itself using the backticks. So now the same thing. Let episode of episodes. So this episodes is coming from here. Okay, and every time I'm displaying the title of that episode. Okay, so every time one episode will come into my episode variable, and in my episode variable I'm taking episode dot title. Okay, every time I'm printing the first value, the title value. So it will basically the output of this will be a list of all titles. Okay, list of all titles. We'll execute this example anyhow, but before that let's cover all the ng for topics. So this is a little complex example when compared to this one, because this is a simple number array, but here this is the object array. Okay, each element in the this array is a object, JSON object. Now, apart from the above things, ng for gives us some predefined variables or predefined references to some useful variables. So one is index variable. Okay, index variable basically will hold the current iteration number of that for loop. Okay, so let's say your application is running and it started with this value, then by default there is a internal variable which is not visible here basically, but we can access it by using some syntax. We'll talk about this example, but when it is running at this stage, the value of that index is 0. Okay, and when it goes to this one, the value will be 1, and the same way here it will become 2, and it will go on. So how to access that, right? So what we can do is let item of items till now we saw, right? Now after that put a colon, semicolon, and then use this syntax. Okay, let I equal index. So basically, this index will be offered by the Angular framework. Only thing is, you just have to use a local variable to access that index variable. Okay, so just access it with I. So just assign this I variable with the index. So this I variable you can print inside the list tag, so that you can see printing all these numbers 0 1 2 3 4 5. Okay, that is first variable, and there is second variable. After the first variable is done, let's close it with the semicolon and then go to next one. Using this first variable, you can always have the first element. Okay, so meaning that if you are printing values, then this is basically a Boolean variable, right? So let first item is local variable. You just chose the name, and you are assigning with the first element. The first one, this first variable is basically coming from the Angular. Okay, whatever right side, right? So right side is coming from the Angular framework. And the same way, if item is last item in that list, then this value become true. Okay, and the same way we have even for even items and odd for odd items. So we'll see all these examples, but just have an idea that all these 5 variables, right? So given by Angular, only in the scope of that for loop. That means, so only inside this tag or element, this variables will be available. So just outside of it, like here, right? So those variables are not available for us. So only in the context of the for loop, or the scope of that for loop, you can access these 5 variables. After that, you cannot access. Okay, and this one more function is called track by. Okay, the track by used to track the changes inside your for loop. Okay, so Angular is two-way binding and one-way binding, right? Meaning that whatever changes in your variables, that will be immediately reflected in your template. So that binding is called the data binding, right? So in that case, let's say you can ask, okay, I'm using for loop here, but let's say I changed the object 3. So instead of large snow, I changed to some XYZ. So will it update my UI? Yes, it will update. So that is the beauty of Angular. So whatever, be it a simple array like this, or be it a complex object like this, or be it even complex like this, whatever, right? So basically, if your array changes in your class here, then it will immediately reflected in your user interface. So in that cases, let's say suddenly all values changed, all 8 values here, right? So all 8 values, some let's say title value is changed for all these 8 objects. So immediately it will update all those 8. How it will do is, it will again reloop your episodes array, and it will try to print the latest value coming, right? But sometimes, let's say you can have 1,000 or 2,000 values in that array, but every time these values are changing, it will keep on changing in the UI. But that is little complicated, right? So basically, it's not complicated, but it will reduce the performance of your application. So let's say only one value is changed. Only instead of winter is coming, someone changed to summer is coming. Okay, so but in that case also, it will refresh all the objects in the template. Okay, but we don't want that. We want only this, whatever changed variable must be updated instead of refreshing the entire UI. Okay, so in that cases, we use track by function. Okay, now we just like other variables, right? The 5 variables we have, like first, last, even, and odd. The same way, we can close the for loop here with colon, semicolon, and this is track by function name. So track by equal to test function here. The test function is written here. So basically, whenever some changes happened in this array, so Angular will call track. I mean, Angular will track all those object changes with these IDs. Okay, so whenever this value is changed, it will call this test function, and in the text function, I am giving the ID as the tracking field. Okay, if that ID is changed, then only refresh the UI. So if that ID is not changed, then do not refresh the UI. So that's how you can reduce the overhead of every time refreshing the entire UI. Okay, so there is another version of the ng for loop. That is, let's say if you are using this ng template, instead of using any other tag, like I use the list tag here, right? So, but if you're using the ng template tag, or like the ng template template, then the syntax is little different. So instead of star ng for, you can use just ng for, and ng for off. Instead of using the off and then the array like this, you'll be having a attribute directive, and there you'll be assigning the what values to be iterated, and then you'll be giving a local variable like let episode, right? So let, instead of let space episode, you will be giving let hyphen episode, so that this variable will be allocated locally, and instead of let I equals to index, you'll be doing let hyphen I equals to index. So only difference is, instead of having entire thing as a single line here in the double quotes, we are having different pieces here. Okay, ng for is here, ng for off is here, ng so let episode is here, and let I equal to index. And if you want to access the first variable, then what you can do, let hyphen first equals to first. Okay, and the output is same. It will print from 0 to 5, just like this. So let's execute these examples, and then we'll go to ng switch, because we covered a lot of the stuff, right? So ng if, ng if else, and ng for. Once these examples are done, we can move on to the ng switch statement, so that the structural directives will be done. Only we have 3 structural directives in Angular. One is ng if, the other one is ng for, and the third one is ng switch. Okay, so we covered ng if and ng for now, and we'll move on to ng switch once the examples are done.
Okay.
Okay, let me remove all these previous examples. I'm not implementing any lifecycle methods. The app component.html, let me remove this. So this is plain now. npm start. Meanwhile, let me write some sample HTML. Let me define a variable. Let me call is admin. Okay, by default it will be false, but again let me assign it to false, and let me go to. Okay, I didn't put any ng here, but let me go here and localhost 4200. So it is saying welcome admin user. Okay, let me put h1 so that it will display a little bigger. Okay, welcome admin user. But I want to display this one only when the logged in user is admin. Okay, let me put star here, and let me put ng if equals is admin. Okay, that's it. ng if equals is admin. Let me go and see, the value is gone, because the ng the is admin is
false.
false. Exactly.
Yeah.
So now let's see in the browser inspect what it is happening. This is the app root, and you see ng reflect ng if is false, and it is saying there is a one tag, some tag, but because of that ng if is false, it is not displaying that. So basically, by looking at this comment, you can tell that. Okay.
Mhm.
Now if we change to true, so that value came. So here you can see again the value is true here. ng reflect ng if true,
Mhm.
and because of this is true, the value is coming here. Okay. So in the comments, it will add some comments. I mean, the Angular will add some comments in the HTML, just for so that we can debug easily the application, right? So that is one example, but to make it little complex, right? So what I can do is I want to show or hide this button only when user clicked on some button. Okay, so show banner. In the show banner, what I can do is this dot is admin equals to false. Okay, this method is called. I'm setting this value to false. Oh, let me add one button here. Button. Click me. So how can we add a click event here? By adding the click uh, event binding, and let me call show banner method like this. Let me save it. So I have click me method, click me button. So whenever I click on it, it will call that show banner. Okay, see, whenever I click, this value is changing here. Here it is true. When I clicked on it, it will disappear. This element will disappear. Okay.
Mhm.
It is happening dynamically. I'm not refreshing any page. Up on clicking, it is basically changing. Right? So let's make it little more dynamic. So instead of show banner, let me change to toggle banner. Okay, instead of just assigning a predefined value, let me change whatever value I have inside the admin boolean variable. Okay. So if it is true, it will become false. If it is false, it will become true. Okay. Now let me go to the HTML and change method name and save it. See, when I click on it, it is coming because the value becoming true. And when I click on it again, it is disappearing because that value is becoming false. Okay. All these changes are happening within this window, and I'm not refreshing the page, right? So we're just clicking it. The Angular is updating the DOM structure dynamically based on that ng if directive. So let's see the ng if else example. Okay. Now, if user is admin, then show welcome admin user. But if user is not admin, then show some different message. Okay. So let me call it ng sorry ng template. Here I can say some paragraph tag. Instead of welcome admin user, this is going to say just welcome user. Okay. And this is not an HTML tag, right? So this is the Angular feature or Angular template holder or template container, we can say. And here I have to give a reference to it, just like we define variable a, like let a, right? So you define a variable just like that. So same way we are defining a template variable, a template reference variable. So for that we have to give hash here. Hash is basically making this template as a referenceable template. So ng template, let me say normal user greeting message. Okay, so this is my template reference variable. Now here what I have to do, this is done, so I have to add a semicolon and I put a else and then I put this one, okay, without a hash. So for defining a template reference variable we have to use hash, but for referencing it we should not use hash. We can directly use it. Okay, so now whenever click on it, whenever I click on it, if it is admin, this value is true, it will display this one. If this value is false, it will display this one. Okay, let's see that. If it is true, I think the value is true. That's why it is coming here. When I click on this, see it changed to welcome user. If I click on it again, the first one will come. Okay, so the if else is working now. So let us see the HTML. So what is happening? So now it is showing the h1 tag welcome admin user. We click on this again, it is showing the paragraph tag welcome user. So if you observe the difference, it is not including the ng template tag also, right? So it's not including this one. So only it is including whatever inside the ng template tag. Okay, not including the ng template itself. Okay, so that is the difference. So got it? The
Yes, sir. Yeah.
if and if else.
If and if else.
Only thing is you have to get familiarized with the syntax. Okay.
Okay.
So mostly I'll tell where we'll use this one, right? So mostly, let's say you have user data, or you have some data or search filter you are using, right? And you're showing some results, search results. Let's say in some cases you don't find any search results. Okay, so you should not show empty space, right? So what you can say is you can show some empty template like 0 results found for your search. That user friendly message you can show. Or sometimes you're not like you want to show whether user logged in or not, or whether user has some messages or not. If there are no messages or notifications for that user, but still user navigated to the notification section, there you can say because this that messages are empty or messages are 0, in that cases you can show you don't have any messages, or you can show all messages are already read or cleared. So something like that. So mostly in those scenarios you'll be using this. Okay.
Okay.
So let me move on to the next section.
For.
Okay. So let's use the basic examples first. Let me say P, and as because this is the structural directive, we should use star. And whenever you type star, all the suggestions will come by this IDE. Now ng for, okay, in the for f must be capital. In the if, I must be capital. Ng for. So what I have to do, I have to declare a variable using the let keyword. Let my local variable, space of. Okay, from of which set of variables you are defining this variable. So it must be a list. Okay, I can say 1, 2, 3. Okay, and here what I should do is I should print this local variable now, because each time one variable or one item from this list will come to my local variable, this. So here what I have to print? I have to print the my variable. Okay, and it's printing 1, 2, 3 here. Let me comment this one. Now let's see what is the output of this one. See, it printed 3 paragraph tags because we put this ng for on top of paragraph tag, right? So that's the reason it replicated the entire section for each item from that array. Here. Okay, so you can just put anything there, it will print that many times. Okay, so it generated basically all these items. Now let's change it to some complicated. So here, complicated example. So here we don't have to hard code this here, right? So it can be any variable from your TypeScript class. Okay, let me call it my array. This my array is not available. That's the reason it is throwing error. Let me go here and create. Let me remove this. Let me create my array of numbers. Okay, so this dot my array equals the same array. Now error is gone. I can see same output. There is no difference between the first scenario and second scenario in this example. Okay, so now let me change instead of number. Let me create a complex object. Okay, but I should not have type number, right? I should have type any. So any means this array is of type any, right? Any type. So you don't have to particularly give only numbers or only strings. We can give objects also. Okay. Now let me add first object. Say name is John. Age is 35. So this is my first object. Okay. Let me add second object also. Mary, age is 36. Let me add third example. $33. Okay, now this is my array. From this my array, yeah, I'm here. So from this my array, every time the object comes, and that we are basically what we are doing, we are printing the entire object. So now what will happen? We are printing the entire object, but not numbers or not name like the previous example, right? So let's go and see. So it is printing object. Okay, it is not understanding that object structure. So the object structure we have here is this one, name and age. So every time it is trying to print entire object, but it is not able to understand this object because this is not a primitive type or a single type variable, right? It's basically complex type. So it's not a number, it's not a string, or it's not a float. So that's the reason it's not able to understand it, and it's saying, okay, you're trying to print an object. But we want only name part of the object, right? We don't want age for now. Or let's say even we want age also, right? So how we can access the only name part of this object? So let's go here and you can say dot name. So we're trying to access the name. Let me save it and see. So I can see all the names coming. I want to display age also beside these names. Okay, what I can do is I can put comma here and I can open the interpolation syntax. I can say my variable dot age. The age is coming. Okay, in the HTML also you can see uh, name comma age, name comma age. Okay, and let's merge this for example and the if example and see how we can basically use these two together to write our actual applications, right? So let's say if age is 35, we can say the user is old, and if age is less than 35, we can say that user is young, right? So what we can say is you can basically put a span tag or any tag for that matter. Span tag, I'm using span tag. I can say ng if equals to. So what I have to do? I have to compare the age of the user here. If it is greater than 35, then say if it is greater than 35, print this and say old user. Okay, and if he is less than 35, we should say young user. Okay, so don't confuse about this one, because this is basically we are taking each object into this variable, and in that object we have name and age properties, right? So we can access those name and age properties using this dot operator, the variable dot age and variable dot name, because we have name and age as fields in that object, right? So that's the reason whether you can use earlier in the if example we used the hard coded one, right? Is admin as a direct variable, single variable, but here we are using the complex object, right? So that's the reason I'm using the my variable dot age to access the age of each item. So now let me save it and go back and see. It is showing for it is greater than 36, it is showing old user. Less than 35, it is showing young user. Because it is 35, I think some variable has 35. That is the reason it is not showing the John. Okay, you can put greater than or equal to 35. Now I can see four values here: old user, young user. But instead of using this way, we can use else operator, right? So that is easy. Else we have to display young user template. Okay, so we have to create that young user template here using the ng template. Okay, we have to remove this, and move this here. Okay, so now if age is greater than or equal to 35, show this, else show this ng else. Okay, So this is how you can use in real-time examples the combination of for loop and if loop, if directives to achieve certain functionalities based on the requirement. Okay. So sometimes what will show, right? So if marks are less than 35, then we highlight the background of that row with red color to indicate users that this row is this person is failed. And if user student gets marks more than 36, then we can show it as green background so that user will be notified that user is passed, right? So those kind of scenarios also we can use this example. Okay. So any doubts so far?
No, sir. So how do we use ng for off?
Yeah, ng for off is same way. Same way. Where is this one? Yeah. Oh, this one.
Mm-hmm.
This one will be using mostly if you want to keep the entire for loop the for directive syntax out of your actual template. I mean, let's say this is literally embedded, right? It's embedded in your HTML. So it is part
Mm-hmm.
of your HTML. So part of
Yes.
this tag. But this one is right. So ng template is kind of outside kind of it's a container. So
Mm-hmm.
if you want this to be a separate part, then in those cases you can use ng for off.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Okay.
So, but if you
Okay.
want to embed that for loop inside your entire structure, then you can use this syntax.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So this we have to use this still, right? So let me copy paste this to reduce some time. I can put it here. I paste it here. Yeah. So let me remove this if else. So it is just printing this values, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 4 records, but it's not printing the number. So I want to print the number of each row. So what I can do, I can just print the I variable here because the I variable will now have the index of the loop every time. Okay, I can put I dot first name comma last age. Okay, now I can see 0, 1, 2, 3. This is the index of loop. Okay, how it is coming? It is basically internally Angular is supplying this index variable for this loop, and we have access to it directly here. Okay, so let's print first item variable here. So what is this meaning is, so if in case if it is printing 4 values, right? So in that 4 values, whenever the first 2 item comes, only that time this will print true, and remain cases it will print false. See, the first row it is printing true, but all the other rows it is printing false. Okay, so let's print the last item. So only for last row it will print true, but for other items it will print false, just like opposite of this one. Okay, this is printing true here, but remaining 3 items it is printing false because
Okay.
we are accessing the index, the last variable. In the same way, for even rows, this will become true. For odd rows, it will become false. So first one it is true, second one false, third one true, I mean the index, right? So index 0
Mhm.
true, index 1 is odd number false, index 2 is true, index 3 is false. Okay. The same way odd items. For first one it is false, second one is true. So wherever it is the odd index, it will give us true here. So what is the use of these variables then, right? So sometimes when you're creating a table or something, so you want to show some round corners for only first row and the last row. So how you can do that? Without these variables, it will be difficult to identify which is the last row, because we don't know the size of array here, right? So it will be difficult for us to know first element. Okay, we can find out first element, but for the last element, it will be difficult to find what is the last row, and we cannot put some special kind of CSS styles there. So if we have this kind of variables given to us by the Angular, then it will be easy for us to use these variables. So for first item, we already have this variable we can use to determine the first row and display some background or something. Okay. Let's say I have a paragraph tag here and I'm printing all this in paragraph. Okay. Let me take this. I can use ng class to add some CSS, but let's not do that. Okay. But what I can do here is I can add some span tag, and I can use ng if it is first item, then first row. This is last item. I can say last row. And if it is even item, even row, is odd item, odd row. It's throwing some error because, okay, we should use div here because paragraph tags doesn't have the other tags. Cannot have other types of tags because we are using div here, but paragraph here it is complaining. So now what I'm doing is for each type, right? So for first row I'm saying first row, and for last row I'm saying last row, and for even row, odd row. So you can see this is first row and even row, and this is odd row, this is even row, this is last row and odd row. Okay. So any doubts so far? I think we are already overboard. I think we'll cover the ng switch tomorrow.
Yes, sir, sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
But just practice these examples, okay?
Absolutely. Yeah. Right.
Otherwise you'll forget.
Mhm.